Perfect. We are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Matt, I don't know if you've seen any of the rest of these podcasts, but there's always kind of 90 seconds I give people a chance to join and just kind of be here and say hello if they want to say hello, if they're listening. Just get like standard workshops, giving people a chance to join and jump off of a call beforehand. You know that pain, don't you?
I mean, I definitely know. I'm a geographer at heart, said Rich. So I always love people to put in the comments where they're from, like what town they're dialing in from, because you get on a webinar, you get people from all over the place. I love visualizing where people are dialing in from.
Yeah. So please, as I said, look in the comments. Have you used StreamYard before, Matt?
I have every now and then.
Okay. So on the right hand side, you'll see where people are getting those comments in. Because it's done live on LinkedIn. So yeah, if you are here, please say hello. And the other thing I try to encourage people to do whilst here is just ask questions. It is a conversation. Obviously, I get the luxury of asking Matt a load of questions, but I always think that if you have a question, it's probably way better than the question I have because it's relevant to the situation that you're in, maybe in your organisation or the moment you're going through. So please do get involved, ask some good questions, and put Matt on the spotlight. Hopefully that's okay with you, Matt.
Definitely, and don't be scared. Anything anyone wants to talk about, it's not like we're live on LinkedIn. It's absolutely fine. But generally, get the questions out there, and also if you are too worried about asking live, you can always drop me a note and we can discuss afterwards.
Yeah, Tom's here as well. Hey Tom, good to see you. Ask questions away, mate. I know you will. Wicked, let's get started. Matt, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited for this. And I wanted to open this with, I moved into the wellbeing world 7 years ago. And your book was the very first book I bought to try to get my hands upon the concept of happiness at work. And 7 years, it's nice to now have you here, having a conversation with you, learning a little bit more about that, because that book was really insightful for me in that moment. So yeah, I'm glad we can have this with a load more knowledge, probably to add to that book as well.
I hope so. We've definitely got a few bits and bobs to put out there and discuss.
Yeah, perfect. Hey Rob, thanks for joining. So before we get into the questions, it'd be really great just to get an introduction. And I never really like doing the introductions. I always think it comes better from the horse's mouth. So over to you, mate. Could you introduce yourself? Tell people who you are, what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a dad. It's my number one job. I'm a husband. Co-founded a business called the Happiness Index. I'm a Spurs fan. See, he's also a Spurs fan. Pretty worried about us getting relegated at the moment. That's really impacting my day-to-day happiness. From a work perspective, I'm a real geek. I love looking at data. I love looking at research. With a cynical look at it, I'm always trying to understand what does this tell, but what does this not tell? And I'm really obsessed with how you bridge that academic world where great research gets done, but often gets left in the cupboard. Mm-hmm. And then how do you run a business in real time where you want to respect this research and use it, but you've also got a million decisions you need to make before Friday. So I love that sort of intersection of where you could get research data and trying to run a business in real time, in real life, with all the million things that are going wrong around you as you do that.
Mm-hmm. And you've done that relatively successfully so far, right? You've obviously run the Happiness Index for 11 years.
Something, yeah. It's a funny one actually, Rich, because we co-founded it about 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. Because it started as a piece of technology in my previous company, mm-hmm. but we carved it out as a piece of technology when demand came. But I actually only joined the business that I started about 7 years ago. So mm-hmm. there's a good 4 years at least of the business where I was involved more on a board level mm-hmm. than a day-to-day role. So it had actually sort of moved out of startup stage by the time I joined it, which is pretty cool in a way, but also was challenging because you had to speed up on what was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so what was that business beforehand? What was the need to create this?
So we started in 2008, a sort of the new version of marketing agencies. They were broadly known as digital marketing agencies, mm-hmm. people working on things like SEO, PPC, all the stuff that's really established now, but it was brand new at the time. So we managed to just get in early into this market and just scale to working with all the best brands around the world. And it was all great, but the biggest problem was when we started, we were 25 years old and we had no clue, absolutely zero clue on how to lead people, how to run a P&L, how to read a P&L, how to run a business, what decisions to make, what blah, 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 all these things. And it was on the surface really successful financially, but it was inside the business, it was quite chaotic because we didn't really know what we were doing. We knew about our products and services because that's what we'd done in our previous careers, but we were 25. We didn't know anything. 25-year-olds know a lot more now, by the way, as well, because I think if you are starting something now, there's so much more information out there, isn't there? There's podcasts like this, there's people you can message on YouTube. You've got AI now. I'm not saying it's easier, but the access of information is more widespread. So it was data, another data business, but it was data for customer and marketing. And then we took those principles when we started the Happiness Index and applied them into how do you look after your people.
Yeah. And how did that change what you were doing there?
Well, the big type of business that we were delivering service to was a data-driven business. If you think about marketing, Rich, they used to be saying in marketing, 50% of my marketing works. I just don't know what 50%. I think it's another Rich. I think it's a Richard Wanamaker quote from like the 1800s or something. But it was so true of marketing at the time that people really just didn't know. And things like Google Analytics sort of started to change that. And marketing went on this more performance related route. And actually, I think it's got a bit too far now. I think it's become a bit too sterile. And I think it's really lacking creativity now, but that's a story for another day. But HR, I felt, and we felt at the time when we were looking, we felt like it was about 10 years behind in terms of the access to the technology, the data, the neuroscience, the psychology that was needed. And I think that's economic, Rich, because I can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount of spend that goes into customer versus what goes into employee is it totally outstrips it. So the budgets were there to build that up. So it's not HR's fault. There's just was less spend on it. And that's where we got in early, like helping, but bring that people science piece, that data piece, the technology piece into HR that had been missing whenever 11 years ago was. I can't even work those maths out right now.
Yeah, so it's fascinating, right? Like, so you created this product system to understand your people's happiness, well-being, probably is the word we would use now, right? Maybe even how your people are performing as well. What did that look like at that stage? Because I want to see what that difference is between that kind of first version to now and what the happiness index system is now. So yeah, what was that beginning?
Totally. It's funny to look back because there's a saying in technology that technology people use, which is if you're not embarrassed by version 1 of your product, you launch too late. And when I look back at version 1 and what we were doing, you're like, oh my God, like, wow. Because it was originally an internal tool, because we just wanted to know, is there a correlation between how your people feel and how your customers feel? That was the first question that we were asking ourselves. And we weren't even considering or looking at causation. We were just trying to understand whether there was a bit of a correlation, then maybe a relationship, and then maybe get into like, does one cause the other? But at that point, we were just looking at it on maps, and we just built a survey that was 2 questions, one to our employees and one to our customers, and then we started plotting it. Probably the brave or stupid thing that we did is we put those stats live up in our office. So when you walked into our office, you could actually tell how happy the employees were and how happy the customers were. And loads of people were like, that's crazy, you shouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. But that's actually all, if you think about it in a consumer world, that's kind of become normal now. Like hotels used to have like a 5-star rating, didn't they? Or 4-star rating. Now you've got TripAdvisor. So at the time, everyone thought that was crazy because they would be like, well, what happens if someone walks in and they're a prospect and all the employees are unhappy and all the customers are unhappy? But the reality is that just never happens. And what it does is it focuses the mind on what you value as important.
Yeah.
Because you could put other stuff. We could have put the money. We could have put the bank balance up there. Couldn't we? We could put all these things. And I've got to say, bank balances in business are important. Let's not say money is important. Flow is king, or whatever the saying is. But that's what we were just trying to do. That was the earlier, and that's all it was. And I'll try and find on my phone and hold it up. But you look at it now, and you're, geez, that was so basic. But I'm just glad we got it off the ground and got it going.
Yeah. And now, what does the happiness index look like now?
Now, the biggest change is anyone on here can use the happiness index for free. That's the biggest change. You can go and benchmark yourself now. You can go to thehappinessindex.com. There's a little tab on there, benchmarking. You can sign up for it, and you can benchmark your company against the global average or the local average or your sector or whatever. So you can go and do that now. That's the biggest change. That's how people get to know us. Then from that point forward, they might upgrade to using the platform. Once they've upgraded the platform, they can then drill into all the areas. So say, for example, they get their data back and psychological safety is looking pretty low. They can then drill down into that, get into the why, understanding what they could do. We're starting to build AI into that to help with the heavy lifting. And then one of the other biggest changes now is the biggest growth of our area is we get into the consultancy of how to fix stuff. And in our early days as a tech company, we avoided consultancy like the plague. We felt it was like the devil incarnate. We should never go down that route. We're a tech company. But there is a point where we've reached where you become trusted in that sector. You've got the people that have done the work, and people actually come to you and they keep coming to us and asking us, yeah, I know you're showing us this now, Matt. Can you help us fix it? So we avoided that. We're probably saying no to that for about 5 years. But just like when we built the first version of the happiness index, people asked for it, Rich, when it was an internal tool. We were like, no, you can't have that. So we were like saying no for years. And then on the consultancy piece, we were saying no for years. Like, we don't want to get into that. But we're actually going through a shift, and we'll start recruiting soon, probably in the back end of the year, to sort of build that out, where as the initial case studies start to come out and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's free parts to it. The benchmark for free. Go and do that for a bit of fun if you want. Then there's the tech. Then there's the consultancy piece.
Yeah, nice. You said we're quite a big piece of growth there, right? And 11 years. And have you been? So you obviously have. So 11 years. Let me get my question correct here. Sorry. Have you been out to market for 11 years, or has the product been created for 11 years?
The original product's probably 12 and a half years. We probably went out to the market maybe 11 years ago and probably started onboarding the first customers maybe a decade ago.
Okay.
But one of the things we tried to do this time out is because the marketing agency was people heavy. So around the world, there's more people that sell and service the happiness index that don't work for the happiness index than do. So we've built a partnership model effectively of people that sell and service to our customers. So in the UK, we are known, like people know of the happiness index. But if you were working with us in Peru or you're working with us in Romania, you wouldn't be working directly with the happiness index. You'd be working with one of our partners. Okay. And again, that's just the experience of doing something the second time round, like thinking about is global international growth was one of our barriers that we got stuck at. So the second time round, you're like, right, okay, what other ways can you do that? It's not easy to find global partners, but when you get the right ones, it works like magic because they're incentivized, you're incentivized, and you all win together.
Yeah. I love that. So you've been to market for, say, 10 years, the last decade. And now let's look at the happiness piece. What's been some standout bits for you, which can you maybe surprised you, shocked you, or really just stand out as key bits of information to help people understand this happiness piece?
It's probably the sort of reminders. You know, when you like read a book or a business book and it sort of like reminds you the basics, and you get to the end of it and you're like, I kind of knew maybe 60-70% of that, but it was good to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
When you go through the data, which we do on company, country, regional, sector, global basis, so different slices of it, you come back to essentially really human things. And I always think there's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's written by the so-called bad emperor in if you've watched Gladiator with Russell Crowe. It's that one basically. But actually, he was a bit of a philosopher and a stoic, and they actually prescribed that book to troops in World War One as an example on how to deal with like difficult situations in your life. But what's really fascinating if you read Meditations is the thing that the Roman emperor, who is leading the biggest empire of all time at that point, everything that he's talking about and all the challenges and the problems that he's got, you would recognize, Rich, Rob, Thomas, anyone else, is that we would all recognize them. They're not crazy things. So when you I don't know when that book was written, but let's just say 2,000 years ago, roughly. It was actually a personal diary to himself that was found when he died. It was never meant to be published, but has been. So what you realize is there isn't anything that makes you happy or your employees happy, generally speaking, that was invented in the last 2,000 years. So we have all this sophisticated language and technology, and we're on StreamYard and we're on LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff. But the big standout thing for me to answer your question is all the things that you come back to are human, and they're not like, and when you say them, they seem obvious, right? So like the number one driver of happiness globally in every country we work in is relationships. Okay. See, I'd say that must be, well, that's pretty kind of obvious. But when there's maybe 10,000 potential answers, knowing like what really moves the dial, and then knowing where your company sits on that. Let's say, for example, I was talking to someone last night, anonymous company, they were saying trust is a real issue in the organization. Now that's one person's view. And have you had the saying, which data is the plural of anecdote?
No, I'll be honest.
So I love it, and I'll re-say it for the because I'm from Essex, I speak really fast. So I'll say it again, which is data is the plural of anecdote. And the reason I love that saying is stories are just like, data is just all the stories jammed together and then put into a spreadsheet, and then you pull the trends out. But you start with a story and you get back to a story. But the point is, so someone said to me, trust, okay, that's a challenge in their organization. I don't know when that person tells me if it's one anecdote. If I collect the data, let's just say they're 1,000 person organization, and I don't see that again, it may just be one anecdote from one person. Doesn't mean it's not important. But if I then test and I do the data and then 1,000 people are telling me that, you're like, oh, okay, this is a serious piece of data here. And then the anecdote has to come out the other side, because the CEO needs to stand up and go, we've been hearing these things about trust. We now see the trend in the data. We're now going to act by doing these things. So people who are not like geeky, like myself, they're not always liking the word data, because maybe they like, again, like myself, wasn't great at maths in school. So you might be put off by it. Or you had a horrible maths teacher and you think, oh, I don't like data. But when you think of it from a work and a HR perspective, it's just all the stories put into a spreadsheet, then the trend analysis done, so you can work out what's going on, just to make sure it's not just outliers and it is an actual trend or a serious thing. Does that answer your question, Rich?
Yeah, 100%. And so relationships has come out as like the key thing that positively impacts happiness. But when I hear that, what about relationships is it?
So it's a good point. So relationships comes up number one, okay. However, if you actually look into the top four, in the top four is also psychological safety. Psychological safety, coined by Amy Edmondson, amazing researcher. Amy's brilliant, and has done so much work to get that phrase that many of us know out there. But it actually comes from Amy. I believe, and I will get back to the bit about relationships in a second. I believe that psychological safety is always the place to start. Because to answer the second part of your question about like what's important about it, for me, this is where we have to have a conversation about toxic positivity. Because real relationships can weather storms. But loads of people have been in relationships where the relationship's fine when it's all going well. So when we're talking about relationships, we're not talking about relationships that just work when things are going well and everyone's hitting their targets. Real relationships are when like the S hits the fan, when things are not going when the team's losing, or the revenue's gone down, or the share price has been hit, because that's when really teams come together and they go, right, this has happened, this is what we're going to do about it, this is how we're going to change it. So relationships is a very all catch all phrase, but for me, that is the reason important for relationships are important, not for the good days, it's actually for the bad days. And if you go away from data for a second and go to anecdote and go and speak to your friends, and my friends might not be a relative sample, but generally speaking, when I'm chatting to friends and family about work and business at the moment, it's pretty negative. Like I met 2 people yesterday for coffees, both telling me pretty horrific stories about the culture and the way people are acting in their organizational and all that kind of stuff. So that relationship bit in the glue of culture is just absolutely essential. But you can't build relationships unless you've got safety, psychological safety, because you're not gonna get there unless you get the safety and the trust first.
Yeah. Can I just, before I add an insight, what are the other 2? So you got relationships, you did top 4. So relationships, psychological safety, and
so the other one that people often laugh when you, well, not often laugh, is often go, oh, that's obvious. It's the freest and simplest but easiest to get wrong. I don't know if that makes sense, Rich.
Yeah. I hope it makes sense.
Is acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It's thank you. But this is why it's the simplest but hardest to get right. In many of our sort of analysis of data, it has the highest standard deviation of the top 4. So what that means, relationships has a lower standard deviation. So what that means is, generally speaking, what we seek from relationships is quite similar as human beings. Even though you might get introverts, extroverts, I've heard there's also omniverts as a phrase as well. We might have different personality types, but we all seek that connection. Some of that might be in more public ways, some of that might be in more private ways, but we seek connection in similar ways. When it comes to acknowledgement, how we see what we want from that varies quite drastically. And this is where companies get it wrong, where they try and bring in like standard acknowledgement. And it's just like, oh, you've done 25 years working with this company, you get a golden watch. and I had someone on the Happiness Index podcast, and they were talking about when that happened to them, and they didn't like watches, they didn't like wearing bling, and they said it actually made them feel unhappy. And they even went on to say they were so embarrassed by this golden watch that they got that they sold it. But then the company found out that they'd sold it, and then that person got in trouble for it. So this is the story. I think this story is like 15, 20 years old from the guy that was telling me on the podcast, but he remembers it deeply. It was the moment when they were trying to acknowledge him, but they totally got it wrong. And the reason they get it wrong is it's a bit like when you open a Christmas present or a birthday present, and someone close to you has got something you don't really like. And the reason you're probably feeling so down at that point is not because it's the wrong present, it's because they don't know you. And that's what it's doing. It's hitting at the heart of like, it's just something I mentioned. I'm a Spurs fan. Someone getting me an Arsenal shirt, and it's not a joke. They just haven't listened. Do you know what I mean? It's not the horribleness of the wrong present. It's the fact that actually, you know what, they haven't listened. They don't really know me, and that plays out in work too. Because guess what? We're human beings.
Yeah, and I'm hearing this. I'm listening to you there. I'm just listening to the concept of Maslow's hierarchy being played out a little bit. This concept of safety, whether that's like the need for shelter or whether that's the need for wherever it might be, right? But then that belonging and connection being the relationship piece, and being part of a tribe and being kind of played out a little bit there.
I don't know definitely. I think Maslow. I mean, Maslow's a funny one because it's known by everyone, but quite discredited a bit these days. Discredit is the wrong word, but maybe it's very outdated. I think probably and we actually use triangles ourselves to visualize some of our stuff, and because of Maslow, it kind of creates that kind of sense of the building blocks. But I think what you actually see in the data is a bit more of a flow between all the bits. So rather than a base building up, even though I said psychological safety starts with former relationships, relationships then feed psychological safety. It's more like the best way to visualize all of these things is a bit more like if you go back to school and think of the water cycle and the sea, where water comes up, it goes into the clouds, it lands on the it lands on the yeah. I would say it more flows like that, but there are starting and end points that are useful to know is what I would say.
Yeah, it's a really nice visualization. Okay. Is there anything else on that happiness index which is interesting for people to know before we move into like kind of the key measurement bits?
I would say probably if someone writes down those 4 things, if you think about something practically people can do, Rich, if you write those down, safety, relationships, we didn't mention the other top 4, freedom, freedom to take opportunities. So safety, relationships, freedom, and acknowledgement, right? Those 4, write them down, take them to your next team meeting and ask people to share what is the most important one to them and why. And Rich, I'm just going to turn it on you, right? So we're going to do it now. So let's say me and you were working on, let's just be fun. Let's say we're working on, we want to get a hotel open on the moon, right? Got ourselves a 10-year plan. Me and you, we're co-founders together. We sit down, we're having a coffee. And I say to you, of these 4, safety, relationships, freedom, and acknowledgement, what's the most important one to you?
Oh, it's a really good question. Good one for success or good one for me from an intrinsic?
You personally, like, I think you can reverse it. Sorry, Rich.
The relationship for me would win because I care about Jenny's time. I still want to be a friend. I still want to be the opportunity to have that relationship we have. And I wouldn't want to lose that. But I know that what that means, because I think about what my friends are like, and especially when they push me, is I need psychological safety. They need to feel that too, so they can speak to me about what it is that we need to do, and it connects. Yeah.
And mine's freedom.
Okay.
So that's probably linked to being an entrepreneur. Really, if my freedom is if my freedom gets impacted even by a small bit, it really slides really quickly. And I don't have data to prove this, but I've interviewed a lot of people and asked this question. And often people who say psychological safety high up, they've had a bad experience in their career somewhere else as well. Like they might have been treated really badly or been in a toxic culture. We've just had to, like, they need that. I've always worked in my own environment, so I haven't that safety element. I haven't had to worry about as much. So I think that we all come loaded, but the answer is not the important thing. It's the discussion between the people. And me and you just touched on it. But start doing that with 5 or 6 people. It gets super interesting.
Yeah, the group think I think is a really great thing, right? It's group coaching, and I really resonate. And I just want to touch on this because I know your love for sport and the way that you think about it as well is mine. I'm the same as you. I've worked by myself for years, but the reason why I seek psychological safety is that from a sporting angle, when I performed at my best, I felt safe to do that. I had the confidence to do that, knowing that there's no ridicule, and so I think that's probably where my psychological safety comes back from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so misunderstood for years in sport, and it is now. They're getting to that point where it is fed in. And I'm a youth football coach. They train that stuff in the FA programs and all that stuff. It's coming in. It started with Amy Edmondson, but it is starting to get into people understanding that putting children or adults into fight, flight, or freeze mode when they're trying to do something which is inherently creative is probably not a good idea.
Yeah, and that confidence to do the thing well is probably where I really affected me. I think that's a really good kind of steering point when we think about happiness, and maybe think about performance as well. There probably is kind of 3 levels, right? The individual, the team, and org, but maybe I want to go maybe into the manager kind of piece, the leader's role in that as well. What are you seeing in those 3 different areas?
Probably the weirdest thing was, so 26th of March, Global Workplace Happiness Report from the Happiness Index comes out. I can't share the exact data, but I can share the trends. And that is definitely what we're calling a middle manager squeeze at the moment. And managers find it really tough at the moment, Rich. they feel like they're getting bombarded all over the place. They feel like AI is coming in. They're getting in a stressful economic environment, they're getting pressure that may come from shareholders, that may come from CEOs, and then they're getting it from the people below them as well. So I think we can't fix this unless we help fix the senior managers in organizations as well. And that's a pretty strong trend that's coming out. I don't know if obviously you're doing more one-to-one stuff, Rich. I don't know if you're going back to the anecdotes, don't know if you're hearing that on the ground at all.
Yeah, I think you're definitely seeing a lot of different stresses within management. I don't see it from a data standpoint. I hear it from this is the stress that they have, communication, or whether that's structures, or whether that's being able to push up and down.
Yeah.
There are things that I'm hearing, but yeah, as you said, an anecdotal kind of space.
Yeah. And if you think your senior leaders are the funnel that a lot of communication goes through in an organization. So if that funnel is stressed, the message is going to come out more stressed, not necessarily going to come out the way that you want it as an organization. So once that impacts comms, that is spreading. There is a whole contagion impact around emotions, and it's more and more research coming out on this. It's like, if your leader feels stressed, you feel stressed. Just like you know, anyone who goes into the supermarket, or you go out into town, you can feel it off someone else. When that person is your leader, that is going to have potentially negative impacts on the organization, and then through to the performance.
And there's and I can imagine it'd be interesting. I'd have this conversation in a year's time once the consultancy side of things has built up in your space, and you've got more data around that, how much work you do with that, with those people specifically, and what that work is.
Yeah, Rich, I live in North London, and obviously I mentioned I'm a Tottenham fan, but lots of my friends are Arsenal season ticket holders, and they are saying at the moment that they can feel the stress and the tension in the stadium. Like they can feel it translating from person to person around like what they're trying to achieve, and they're worried that it's impacting the players. Like these things, they're not just in textbooks. These are things that people feel in real life. And I've used the example from North London, but think about everyone that's listening. Think about a time in your career when maybe you've been working with someone and you could tell that the way they are is impacting you. It's we'll have all been in a situation where that's happened in our career.
Yeah,
positively as well. Positively as well. Sometimes you can meet someone, they're like, "We can do this," and you think, "Yeah, no, actually, we can."
Yeah. I completely agree. It is contagious, right? It's the environment, and I began to think about the Spurs. I'm a West Ham fan, so we're in a very similar position. I think form-wise, we're slightly different, but I can imagine that losing environment is contagious, isn't it? It's until when you begin to get wins, then that becomes contagious as well, because the environment changes, and you don't just like West Ham, for example. We would go one down, and then we're like, well, we're not going to get one back. We don't feel like we're going to get one back, or we go one up and we don't feel safe because we think we're going to let goals in, and the whole stadium feels that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a vibe, isn't it? So that's really interesting, and it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, because I guess how do you change that, right? I presume this is where I can market myself. It's that coaching to help people understand that and build confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been working across sports since the first days of the Happiness Index. Cricket was the first sport that adopted us. We work with UK sports. We work across every sport within that. And sport, it's really weird. Sport and the military were two of the areas that kind of understood that how you feel impacts how you perform. Business was kind of a bit more cynical about it. But like if you meet, generally speaking, when in my head, I always felt like, if I met someone from the military and I said I work in happiness, they're going to think, oh, who the hell is this fluffy guy? But what actually happens if you meet people in military is they make the link quicker than anyone else. I've heard a version of this so many times, which they go, I say what I do when they ask me, and they go, yeah, no, if you're behind enemy lines and morale's down, people could die. That's what they go to straight away. Like I thought I would have to explain it more because you're in like what could be deemed the sharp end and what I've wrongly people might say is the fluffy end, but actually people in military get it straight away. People in sports get it straight away. You don't have to explain how you feel impacts how you perform. Weirdly, in corporate world, it's almost like pushed away, like, oh, that's the bad stuff. You shouldn't talk about that. Like, don't admit that. That's like weakness, all this kind of stuff. So,
which is crazy, right? Because it's the opposite way around, right? But you think about the military, very physical, that demand physically. Sport is a physical thing and it's the output of a physical. Whereas us as people, as professionals, we use our brain to do the work we do. And so actually, isn't it more important that we understand this concept?
Yeah, I had never thought of it that way, Rich, but you're actually right, aren't you? It's probably, there's probably a more negative impact of ignoring it. And I suppose sports people are quicker to learn the mind and the body are connected. But you're right. Lots of us are not necessarily reliant on our body to do our jobs. But again, it does flow back, doesn't it? We all know if we're not looking after our health, it impacts our brain and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Look, you tagged me in a message earlier on after your post. You gave me a really good kind of question, which I've added because of it. Peak performance versus high performance. And then I wanted to, because of your concept there, one of the things you said was peak performance and trying to achieve a peak performance over a 4-year cycle for an Olympian, for example, versus high performance, maybe a CEO achieving success over 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Or consistently. And then I wanted to think about sustainable performance as well. And I wanted to throw that into the mix for you. Can you just unpick those jumbled words I just said?
Yeah. Well, I brought it up because high performance and peak performance often get confused. And it is one of my bugbears. I love sport and I've talked about it already, but it's where a sporting analogy gets used in work that's not relevant. So if we take peak performance, right, the ultimate example of that is the 100 meters. Okay. So you are training every day, probably. I don't know. I've not checked the training programs, but you need to peak for less than 10 seconds once every 4 years. I'm exaggerating it because you do have other tournaments in between. But let's just say I don't know, 52 weeks in a year. Let's say they run 20 races a year. All of that training is for 20 times 9 if they're at the top end. So peak performance is about peaking at that right point in sport, and it's even more important. Now, we do have peaks and troughs in business. That is true as well. But when we're talking about high performance, we're talking about sustainable performance over time, that you can run that marathon of work. I'm mixing up analogies here, I think, Rich. We're bringing in the
I like where you're going.
But it's just important to know the difference between the two. It's just like another thing that is really important to know the difference between a target and a metric. So happiness is a great metric, a poor target. So let's use sport again. 10 out of 10 happiness is a poor target. 9.5 seconds in 100 meters, if you're the ultimate and breaking records, that's like a great target. If that's humanly possible, I don't know. Some people are going to be like, that's never going to be done. But it's just understanding the differences and the nuances of the word. Stop like mistakes, which we'll go on to that I made with does it make the boat go faster? And that's where I think my point on this is understand the difference between a target and a metric, and remember that sport is there to inspire business, but not to become the book to design it on. Otherwise, you can make mistakes. And just so I'm not in my glass house, I can share one that I've made as well.
Yeah, go on.
So, Luke Knight, he used to work for me, brilliant guy, runs an amazing digital marketing agency now. He met and read Does It Make the Boat Go Faster? By one of the 8 rowers, Ben Huntley. Is it Ben Huntley Davy? Is it? No, I'm gonna have to get that right. Let's get that right before the end of this. If you can Google it for me, Rich, to read that. But they were a team of 8 rowers around the time that, people might remember Redgrave and Pinson and people like that. They were in the 4 boat. James Cracknell, but there was an 8 boat that won gold, and
Mhm.
they went about it with one simple question, which is, does it make the boat go faster?
Mhm.
So Luke meets this guy, this Olympian. He's really impressed. He reads the book. He's like, everyone, we need to read this book.
Mhm.
And then that's Luke's part, right? He's done the right thing there. But then I looked at that and thought, this is absolutely amazing. We should adopt this. We should make this our thing at 4Ps. This should become our question. We ask everything. So we steam ahead with this new thing, applying this like brilliant Olympian theory into our business. And then Emma Pilcher, now Emma Shaw, came into a meeting one day and said, "Let Matt, all this boat's going really fast. Slight problem. People are falling off the back."
Mhm.
And that was a wake up call for me, because on the surface it was brilliant. And by the way, Ben does consultancy in this area, and I'm not saying he advocates for that, because I wasn't working with Ben. I just
Mhm.
read the book and thought,
Mhm.
this is brilliant. I was in my 20s. I jumped ahead. As I said, people in the 20s, I was in my 20s. I didn't run a business. I just read a book and thought it was brilliant. And that's what I
Yeah.
mean by that. Like, there is so much meaning you can take from that concept, like of that question, and you can really use that in your business. Does it make the bet? Like, we design product all the time. Like, asking that question is a really great question. Like, there's loads of stuff that you could probably pull out of your product that you don't need.
Mhm.
But when you apply it too broadly out of context, that really was about peak performance. That was about peaking every 4 years to win a
Mhm.
gold medal. It
Mhm.
wasn't about high performance. And I misunderstood that. And that resulted in burnout and people leaving our organization, and problems that on its human level shouldn't be happening. And then on a business level, it's going to cost you money. You lose your best people, you're going to lose your best customers. You do that over time, that has a compounding negative impact that you don't want. So thanks to Luke and Emma for
Mhm.
helping us out on that. And did you find Ben's full name out?
Yeah, Ben Hunt Davis.
Bunt Hunt Davis, check him out.
Ben Hunt Davis.
Great guy. I've heard him speak as well, and a big fan. But it was a bit where there's loads of great books out there, isn't there, that you can read, and
Yeah.
then you just take it and go too far. That's my little subtle point on it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example, and I like the analogy between the sprinter and the marathon runner, or the ultra marathon runner. Right, sustainable performance for me is the cross between all modalities and understanding the key behaviors to allow you to do that.
Yeah,
We forget that recovery is a huge part of performance.
totally.
And if you think about a marathon, you don't run a marathon on a flat for the most part. You don't run it on a treadmill. You're up and down. So there's going to be moments where you're going to be having to take in that recovery
Yeah,
and rest and regain energy. And there's going to be moments where you're going to have to push a bit harder when you're going uphill.
yeah. And I also think enjoyment and happiness are part of sustainability as well. Like, there's so much more research now, isn't there, around fitness and food and diet, about, especially at this time of year where people have given stuff up in January, and then by February they've kicked it all in because they've made a change that isn't enjoyable, and they just and it can't be sustained. But when we apply that into the world of work as well, like, what you're doing, you've got to enjoy it as well, because it's not going to be sustainable.
What's the point? And it's one of my mantras is like enjoy the journey.
Yeah,
You have like I'm 36 years old. I know I've got 30, 40 years ahead of me. If I don't enjoy it, what's the point? I can get there and go, well,
yeah,
did you enjoy that, Rich? And I reflect and I ask this question to my clients a lot. Okay, well, are you doing now what your 85-year-old self would be happy with,
yeah. It's a great
or
question.
what you need to change? Because I think what is the point? So many of us just get lost in that unreflective moments of just working, just not seeing our
Yeah,
friends, not seeing our family, not connecting, not putting ourselves first. And I'm like, what is the point? Like life
yeah,
is to be lived. And I think
yeah.
you probably wouldn't do what you did if you didn't enjoy it, right?
Yeah, but I was guilty of that in the first business. I just lived in the future for the whole time,
Hmm.
and then we sold it, and then I reflected.
Yeah. Okay.
And someone said, I met up with one of our old customers who's a friend of mine now, Robin Blake. She's worked at some amazing brands, but I knew her from like Vivienne Westwood and Selfridges and places like that. And she said to me, "Oh, do you miss 4Ps?" And I said, I can't even, grab it. It doesn't. It just it. I was so like, move forward, move forward, move forward, move forward. I don't even. I have obviously memory. I can look at photos, but I didn't take enough time to reflect. I can't even think about it as a concept to even think, did I miss it? Because it was just like that, because I was on to the next. And I think going back to your point around 85, if you don't take time to reflect, and there's different ways to do that, isn't there? You can write stuff down, you can talk about it, whatever. You might just get to the end and not even really be able to grab it out and think about it. So that's one of the downsides of not reflecting, which I definitely didn't do.
Yeah, there's so many pieces to that around like the reflection piece, and yeah, I think it's a motivator as well. If you don't reflect on that question, then where's the motivation coming from? That allows you to make the changes that you need to. Like if I was to ask that 27-year-old Matt, whenever you were in that peak of that, go make the boat go faster. What's the future? What do you want your future to look like?
Yeah, exactly.
That would have made you would have made some changes at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also reflecting on it and realizing what you succeed is a powerful thing to do as well, because you've been hard on yourself all the time, aren't you? Like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, blah, blah, blah. But you can sit back and go, oh, actually, the stuff, recognizing what has worked to continue to do what has worked is also really useful, because you might forget, if you're not actually reflecting and writing stuff down, you might actually forget what has got you to there, and you may forget to keep doing it.
Yeah. That's also a really good point, isn't it? Around just like the reflection, not just for the negative, reflection for the positive.
Yeah, and I suppose chefs must do this, mustn't they?
Yeah.
Like, you cook some good food, you need to actually have written the ingredients down so that you can redo it. Because if you were just cooking all the time, making meals, you might not actually remember. Is it Tenacious D, like the best song of all time? Is the lyrics the best song of all time? A tribute. But he can't remember. That's obviously the joke behind it, isn't it? Like he wrote and performed the best song of all time, but he can't remember, and he has to write a tribute to the best song of all time. Like again, a musician not writing down the lyrics. I know this is going to age me, but I've been watching the Take That documentary on Netflix. Have you watched it, Rich?
No, I haven't watched it.
It's just fascinating to watch Gary Barlow just obsessed with the process of like trying to write a hit song and failing quite a lot at the beginning of it. And it's really interesting to watch that and watch it actually on your point of reflection and work out what's not working. But he's reflecting a lot. He's like looking back like, oh, they've only got to number 50 in the charts, and they're like, what's not working? And they're reviewing it, and then they're slowly working on it to the point where they get that sound, which became known as the Take That sound, and then they don't look back from there.
Yeah, it's really interesting because talking the reflection piece. Now you're talking about bringing that into a team, right? And actually, I have these conversations with managers and just friends and clients, I guess, all the time around the concept of feedback or reflection, right? Because sometimes that they can be collaborated, and I don't think we do this enough. And it'd be interesting to see how that for you connects to happiness. So I'm going to see if we can make a connection there in regards to the hot debrief and cold debrief concept.
Yeah,
if you think about the military, they do this. That's where it's come from, but in the moment, they'll do a hot debrief. What happened there? What have we learned? And then they will go back and have a cold debrief about the thing. It's the same for sport, right? After a game, what happened? We lost, we won. Why? Fantastic. Got the emotional bit out. But then they'll do a cold debrief as a team and as an individual to help us understand feedback and performance, right? To how we improve. It's not just, but when they do that, they're not just looking at the negatives. It's, you did this really great as well. Let's make sure we keep doing that.
Yeah, Jackie Dale brought into the Happiness Index the concept of retro, everything we do, what went well, what we could improve. I mentioned I'm a youth football coach. There's another youth football coach. I've got to prove. I've got my footballs here. They're in there. Even with our 9-year-olds, we do that. We go through every match. We go through and we say what went well in that match and what could we improve. And then, so we do that on the Sunday, and then we meet again on the Friday. Then the coaches do the cold. So we actually have the kids do the hot debrief, as you call it. Then the coaches do the cold debrief. So we say, okay, thanks for what you said. These are the things that we felt, that we saw. And I'm talking about 9-year-olds here, and I've taken it in from work, but we're still talking about human beings. On the point of feedback, we mentioned acknowledgement earlier, Rich. 3 drivers within acknowledgement are recognition, being listened to, and feedback. So although feedback to many of us is excruciatingly painful and difficult to do, receive and give, it is a crucial part of acknowledgement. So again, so many, we're just not trained on it. Like I think every company should train their employees on how to give and receive feedback. The problem is you need psychological safety again, because what happens if you don't feel safe? You're not going to give feedback to the CEO that maybe their comms could improve because you think they're going to fire you for saying it. So feedback culture, you've given one model, I've given one model. However you do it, it's absolutely essential, and I would highly recommend training on it. It's such a basic thing, but has such an important part in how human beings feel and improve. We need feedback.
Yeah, you don't progress if you don't have the awareness of where you need to progress, right?
And I've got to say, Rich, like we do 360 feedback. We do it here. Gemma organises it. I still open it and I go to the negative stuff straight away. Like I work at a company, we talk about it, we train people on it, we're doing it, but it's just still part of me is like, oh God, it still dreads it because it's still back to school, isn't it? Like, oh God, what do people? And you have to take it and you have to read it and you have to sit with it and you have to listen to it. You don't have to. There is some feedback that you can look at it and go, actually, I don't agree with that. That's fine. You can't do that. If you're doing that with every piece of feedback, there's a problem. But there are times when you can look at it and go, well, maybe blah blah blah. But you've got to read it. You've got to sit with it before you react. And I suppose take it hot, but analyze it cold is what I would say using your description.
Yeah. I used to take feedback really hot, and then the magic would happen when it was cold.
That's it. It's on the bike ride, isn't it?
Oh, you've heard me. You've said something bad about me. I don't believe you. I agree with you. And then it would process and go, oh, okay, actually, I need to make that change. And apologies, coaches, for the people I've blown up or kind of disagreed with and maybe switched off to, because in time it does progress, right? It does change.
That's it. I think you've said you like it, Rich. I've said like it. I don't think we're unusual in that. I think everyone's feeling that same thing.
Yeah. But as we both agreed, it's the most important thing. And if you're not doing it, then you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
Look, I know we're nearly at time, so I have one last question for you. If a HR is listening to this and wants to start or make a change as of tomorrow, what's your one piece of advice that you would give them?
One thing that going back on the thread of listening, Rich, you can't solve every problem that your employees tell you about, right? But you can listen. And I've read an incredible bit of research about the chemistry in your brain and what happens when someone shows you empathy about things that you're stressed about. And when that chemical reaction, when you go to someone with a problem and they show enough empathy to listen and let you talk it through, chemistry in our body goes off that makes you trust the person that's listening to you more. So as businesses get more stressed and everything feels more time dependent, remember that investment in listening, and I don't mean through technology, I mean the human side of it. You can still use, like I said, the benchmarking. I mean that actual taking time to listen to your people, because going back to that data on the middle managers, they're feeling more stressed. But if you are a middle manager and you are listening, you do need to prioritize listening, because the process of listening to your team is going to make them trust you more. When they trust you more, they're going to feel more safe. When they feel more safe, the relationship's going to build. And then if your company is doing well, it's just going to get better. If your company's in trouble, which lots are at the moment, it's going to help you get out of it. So I just want to link up that simple process of listening to someone's got a problem. And again, you can't fix all the problems, right? And you may have to say, look, Rich, I know you're on 50 grand and you want to be paid £1 million a year. I can't afford that. It's not going to fit into the budget. It's not about saying yes to everything. It's not about being a people pleaser, but just being able to listen and go, no, I get you on that. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to write it down. You are important. That leads to all that stuff that we're talking about. Like the chemistry in us will build the trust. People will feel listened to, relationships will build. And whether you're in a good or bad position in your company, it will help you move forward to success. And that word that you used, Rich, sustainable. There's no sustainability without a listening framework within an organization.
Yeah, I love that connection, how you've connected listening to psychological safety, but that also then connects to relationships and top two, and then I think that way connects to all four pieces to your kind of key parts, right? I love that. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Before we close out here, how can people find you? Obviously, the happiness index is released on, you say, the 26th of March.
Yeah, 26th of March, that report comes out. The event's sold out, unfortunately. That's at Google HQ, but check our website, thehappinessindex.com. I also do consultancy work myself and speaker work. That's mattphelan.co.uk. But the best way to reach out is on LinkedIn. And like we said, not everyone's going to ask questions in a public forum, and some people will watch this on catch up. So if anything we've talked about, you've got a question or you agree or disagree or you want to know more about, just message me. I will get back to you.
Yeah, 100%. May, thank you for your time. Stay where you are. Everybody else, keep your eye out for the next one. It's uploaded today. Talking to Ashwin Mehta about AI and future of work. So that's going to be a really interesting conversation. But for everybody else, have a great evening, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rich.
Cheers, mate.